I learned this distinction between self-esteem and self-efficacy. Self-esteem is looking in the mirror and saying, you're marvelous, you're fabulous, you can do anything you want, all of which are not necessarily true. And what we find when we measure people's self-esteem, do you know what group in our society has the highest measured self-esteem? Career criminals. They love themselves. So we've been teaching children to think like career criminals. Now, self-efficacy is a little bit different, which is I look at the problem I'm facing and I look back at the previous experiences I've had and say, what have I learned from the past that I can apply to solving my current problem? Yeah, I know I can do that. So self-efficacy is the belief based on past evidence of experience that you can solve the current problems you're facing today. And I guarantee you, every successful person has self-efficacy. They may not have a high self-esteem, like they may not think they're wonderful, but they do think they can figure it out.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. Today's game day here at PYP. I have an amazing guest who is ready to take the field and share with us his insights about leadership, about how we can overcome anxiety, and a lot of other great things. His name is Dr. Roger Hall. Roger, are you ready for kickoff?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah. So team, here is what I know about Dr. Hall. First of all, he is the author of Staying Happy, Being Productive, the Big 10 Things Successful People Do. He's also the author of Expedition. He is a business psychologist with clients all over the country, and he trains leaders to monitor and manage their thinking. Roger knows great leaders work on themselves first, and then success in their companies follows. Roger received his doctorate in psychology from Ohio State University in 1991. He has worked with thousands of leaders and loves to work with small entrepreneurial firms as well. So, Roger, it's great to have you here. My first question gets us right into things, and it has to do with when you got the call to leadership. Tell us that story, and then what is it like to be you and play your current position?
You know, I think I got the call to leadership. I was a high school student, and I had a youth pastor who kind of pushed me into these leadership roles, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I had confidence in his decision-making, so I started doing it, and it's kind of taken me down the path of leadership ever since. And so what does it mean to be me in my skin as a leader? My college roommate and I, when we were freshmen in college, we were looking at the student newspaper, and there was a picture of the president at the time, and whispering in his ear was his chief of staff. And my roommate pointed at the president and said, I want to be that guy. And I pointed it to the chief of staff, and I said, I want to be that guy. And I've always seen myself as more suited for the unelected advisor position. And so I feel really grateful that the way my career has kind of evolved is that I am an advisor and a guide to the leaders in business and in finance and in law. So I'm grateful that I get to be the guy whispering in their ear.
Well, first of all, it's a great picture you painted, and I could just see that scene. And did your friend become the other guy?
Well, he's not the president of the United States, no. But he has taken visible leadership positions. Yeah, he's taken visible national positions. We'll just say that, yeah.
I see the power of manifestation, which is what you spend a lot of your time doing with people is the power of thought, where everything begins. So tell us, what is the hardest thing about leadership right now from your vantage point? You are in working with folks who are leading companies or leading small firms, are trying to lead themselves. We all know we've just come off of a really, really different kind of year. For some, it was amazing. For some, it was horrendous, and everything in between. What do you see as being a big challenge for leaders right now, Roger?
I think for the last year, I've been trying to get everybody's heads screwed back on correctly, because so many of the leaders I've been working with have been trying to manage the fear that their people are experiencing. I've seen a wholesale increase in the amount of freaking out among the workforce, and for lots of reasons. And the one thing I keep hearing is unprecedented. These are unprecedented times. And I guess I'm kind of a nerd, and I spend a lot of time reading. And one of the things I read is history. And the more I read history, the more I realize what we're facing is not unprecedented. And so part of the thing I've been working with leaders on is helping them get a better sense of history and a better sense of the future. Because if we just look at the immediate, it's easy to get frightened and think, humanity is coming to an end and there'll be a meteor who hit us and we'll go the way of the dinosaurs. That's the kind of anxiety that's in play. So part of the leader's job is to provide hope founded on reality for their people so that they can have confidence in their future.
That is so interesting that you've seen that across the board. What's your theory about the freaking out? Is it because, I'm just curious, I don't even want to put my own thoughts into there. Why don't people have a better sense of our history? And to your point, we as a species have gone through some pretty rough times if you study history. So why right now seems so unmanageable for so many?
I think, frankly, it's because we have so much media that has a financial interest in our fear. So, and we're talking football. So, Mary Lou, you watch football.
I do.
You're watching a football game. The advertisers know their audience. So you're watching a football game. What are the ads for?
Oh, fast food, cars. Right now, well, it's not football season as of this recording, but it's March Madness, and it's the same principle. We're getting all the tax companies, TurboTax, and insurance is a big one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So if we look at the things that are not just sort of time related or seasonally related, like taxes, the first two things you said are fast food and what was the other thing?
Cars.
Oh, and cars. But what kind of cars? It's usually pickups, right?
Hiccups.
So
yes.
If you look at the audience, and the other one people always call out from the audience is Viagra. And so
yeah, pharmaceuticals.
Right. The advertisers on football know that their audience is primarily male. They're guys who like to drive pickup trucks. They like to have sex, and they like to eat ribs. Okay. So they know their audience.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. If you watch the news, the advertisers know their audience. What are the ads for?
Oh my gosh. I don't watch the news myself. However, sometimes I'm in places where the people that I'm visiting do. And it's mostly pharmaceutical drugs.
Yes. For what kind of diseases? Like beriberi?
Diabetes.
Okay. Stress-related illness. Keep going.
Oh, depression.
Stress-related illness. Keep going.
Yep. Psoriasis, irritable bowel syndrome, stress.
Everyone you've described is a stress-related illness. So the news provides yes. a product, which is fear, and the advertisers know that the people watching it are going to have stress-related illnesses. And so one of the things I've encouraged people to do is unplug. I mean, we've got a 24-hour news cycle. I'm of the age where we had news for 30 minutes a day on 3 different channels. And now we have, I think, 4 or 5 networks that are 24 hours of news a day. There's just so much we can take. And so what's happened is people plug into this information seeking. And when people are afraid, Mary Lou, the first thing they do is they try to control the thing they're afraid of. So if I'm afraid my 2-year-old is going to stick a fork in the electrical outlet, what do I do?
Well, you're going to, buy something to cover up the electrical outlet, or because the kid's going to grab the fork.
Yeah, the kid's going to grab the fork. So I control the outlet. And so
Yes.
we seek to control the things we fear. But when we can't control something, what do we turn to? Well, what we turn to is information gathering. And so anytime somebody is on a subway platform or waiting for a bus, I encourage them to look around and see where people are looking. And what you almost invariably see are there are a bunch of people looking down the train tracks for the train or the subway car. And they'll spend 5 minutes looking down the track to gain about a 3-second advantage over the person who's looking at their phone or
Right.
napping. And so we spend an incredible amount of time and effort seeking information over things that we have no control over. The Weather Channel is a great example. I have a window and I pretty much know what the weather's going to be like.
Yes.
But the Weather Channel has, I think, $500 million in annual revenues so people can know what's happening outside their window.
Or everywhere else in the world, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. My mother loves the Weather Channel. And the way they show these snippets of things and it's not the full picture. And so again, the fear mongering, the worry, all that stimulation to churn people up is at play. And you have built a course. You were telling me about this in the pre-chat, Roger. Tell us all more about this course and why you created it.
Thank you for asking. I created it because I saw so many people living with so much anxiety. And so I created a course called Freak Out, and the subtitle is Fear Less, Live More. And in the 4-session course, people learn about the science of fear, what humans are afraid of, how to get over fear. And then to me, the most important is how to live more, how to embrace risk in order to have a really fantastic life. Because life is not just the avoidance of danger. It's embracing some level of risk to have enjoyment. I took a snowboarding lesson. I'm 57 years old and I wanted to learn how to snowboard. And the teacher said, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And so there's risk involved, okay? And I bruised my ribs the first time out. And so there was risk involved. I could have stayed home, sat on the couch and looked out the window, but I wouldn't have had the experience, right? So we all take calculated risks in life. And I think what happens is in our society is that the people who are selling fear make a ton of money from it. And as a result, we misapprehend our risks. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not denying the severity of this worldwide pandemic. I'm not denying that people are dying from the disease. So don't get me wrong on that. But we embrace risk every day. I mean, you and I fly on airplanes, and the riskiest part of air travel is the drive to the airport. But we embrace that risk every day.
Yeah, that's right. And to your point about calculated risks, there's some thought that goes into it. And at some point, you have to make a decision. If you're going to go expand your experience in this life. And I remember hearing about former President George Bush, the senior, who's no longer with us. I think he went skydiving on his 93rd birthday.
Yep.
And I remember reading about that and thinking, there's someone who really gets it. And another person that I follow and think really gets it in terms of living life to the fullest is Sir Richard Branson. The man is not a young man, and yet he's out there doing all kinds of physical activities. And, of course, people are like, oh, well, yeah, he's Sir Richard Branson. He can do whatever he wants because he has all that money. Well, the reason he has all the money is because he took a risk.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, he's Sir Richard Branson because he did take risks,
Exactly.
not the other way around. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Now, with risk taking, this is when things can go wrong. You shared a story about taking a snowboarding lesson, bruising your ribs. I would like for you to tell us about a time, Roger, when you found yourself playing out of position, when things did not go according to your game plan, and you were metaphorically sacked, intercepted, or you fumbled the ball. What happened? And then what was the lesson you took away from that experience?
Wow. I don't think you can meet a grown-up who's had any sort of life without setbacks. And it's really a matter of which one do I want to choose. I could choose the one where in the economic downturn of 08, 09, the Great Recession, I lost 40% of my income from 3 clients in 10 days. I essentially went from having enough money to having a lot less money. So I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to be out of money. I know what it's like to wonder, am I going to have enough money to pay my bills? And lo and behold, I kept my head down. I kept working at it and kept treating people well. And in time, those who had to let me go because of finances eventually hired me back. And it all worked out. And so I've played out of position. So I encourage people not to be afraid. And it was in that period of time I learned the difference between being broke and being poor.
And what is that difference?
Well, it's a mindset. I mean, being poor, when the question comes down, who will take care of you? The mindset of somebody else better take care of me, that would make me poor. But if being broke is, okay, I got to figure this out. I'm going to have to sell some stuff, or I'm going to have to work harder, or I'm going to have to economize, whatever I'm going to have to do. I may be out of money, but I'm going to figure out a way to make money again. And I learned the difference between being broke and being poor. And so I learned from that experience, I may be broke again, but I'll never be poor because I'll always figure it out.
Thank you for explaining the difference. I think that's so important, especially now where there are people who, again, through no fault of their own, lost their job, or a company had to shut down, and it does come down to mindset. So I would like for you to look into your crystal ball, Roger. I know none of us really has one, but it's fun to do some forecasting here. That's right. So what do you predict will have the greatest impact on how we show up to work in life over the next, say, 5 years?
I think it really is about mental set, mindset, attitude. You know, you were talking about people who have lost their businesses. And my heart goes out for the people in the restaurant businesses and in the event businesses. Those businesses are really, really hurting. And the people who are working in those businesses are really hurting. And what I know is they've had to keep their head down. They've had to economize. They've had difficult times, but they will come back. And the difference in the next 5 years between those who launch back and those who stay broken is going to be mindset, which is, okay, I'm licking my wounds, I'm feeling pretty bad, but I have the resources internally to turn this around. Those people will figure it out. They may not go on to be Sir Richard Branson, but they will go back to some level of success.
Now, have you always had this kind of attitude, or is it something that you developed as you moved through your life?
No, I did not used to have this attitude. I grew up the son of a university professor, and my parents made a deal with the university that they would serve the university and the university would take care of them. And it worked out for my parents. You know, the university was good to my parents, and that was a good deal. But that didn't work out for me. And so I had to learn that it isn't someone else's job to take care of me. It's my job to take care of me. And that took me a long time to learn the other lesson, to believe someone would take care of me, a large institution. And it took me many years to unlearn that. And I had to learn it through the school of hard knocks of being self-employed, frankly, by being fired by a large institution and having to figure it out on my own and starting my own business.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
The difference in mindset between being an employee, where you think somebody is going to take care of me. I just need to show up and do what they hired me to do. This is the darker side to playing your position, right? There can be a mindset, well, I'm just playing my position. But on the other side, how I use that phrase is you do have to show up and you have to be yourself. Number one, you have to be true to who you are, even if that doesn't fit in with what's around you, and you'll figure it out. There'll be somewhere that is for you. But boy, you do learn from the school of hard knocks. You do sometimes get thrown out of the nest. When you didn't want, you were like, no, I'm going to be here. And I think it's interesting too, that you witnessed your parents' experience and maybe somewhere subconsciously believed that that could be your experience too. That generational change that happens, here you are now, you are your own businessman, you have a practice, you've written a book, which I want you to talk about here in a second. But for people listening who might be in that space of pretty new to thinking about going out on their own, what's something you remember from that time in your life that really helped you keep going instead of quitting on yourself?
I learned this distinction between self-esteem and self-efficacy.
And what is that?
Self-esteem is looking in the mirror and saying, you're marvelous, you're fabulous, you can do anything you want, all of which are not necessarily true. And what we find when we measure people's self-esteem, do you know what group in our society has the highest measured self-esteem?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Career criminals. They love themselves.
That's awesome.
So we've been teaching children to think like career criminals. Now, self-efficacy is a little bit different, which is I look at the problem I'm facing and I look back at the previous experiences I've had and say, what have I learned from the past that I can apply to solving my current problem? Yeah, I know I can do that. So self-efficacy is the belief based on past evidence of experience that you can solve the current problems you're facing today. And I guarantee you, every successful person has self-efficacy. They may not have a high self-esteem, like they may not think they're wonderful, but they do think they can figure it out.
Very interesting. So did that drive you to ultimately write the books you've written? Tell us more about your books.
The most recent book is called Staying Happy, Being Productive, The Big 10 Things Successful People Do. And I had a supervisor who was teaching me marital therapy. And she said, Roger, unhappy couples, even if you teach them how to stop fighting, that's none of the skills that happy couples have. And that stuck in my mind. And then there's this quote it's the first line of the book, Anna Karenina, which is, every happy family is the same. Every unhappy family is unhappy in their own way. And what that crystallizes is that there are some simple things that happy people do. The habits of happiness and success are small in number and pretty few, and they're common. And unhappy, unsuccessful people, they all think they can do it their own way. And so I started looking at what distinguishes happy, successful people from unhappy, unsuccessful people. And I just started observing and writing it down. And I got up to 8, and then I got up to 10, and then I said, well, I got to stop somewhere. And so these 10 things were the things that I kept seeing that happy and successful people kept focusing on. So they focused on their thought life. Almost all of them had some sort of spiritual life. They took care of their sleep. So they had sleep and rest were important to them. They had good recreation. They loved their work. They had a healthy relationship with money. They had a good home life. So their love life was good. Their primary love relationships. They had friends. So that's their social life. And then they exercised and they ate well. So exercise life and nutrition life. And those were the big 10 things that I saw successful people doing over and over. So for this book, I just took a deep dive into the research in each of those areas and tried to bring about some of the highlights for each of those 10 areas.
That's great. And, team, I will put a link to Roger's book on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And if having more happiness and a better life is something that you're seeking, it sounds like he's got some great tips in there. And it's easy to have a list, right? Like you just listed it, but it's another thing to really go down and study what is behind each thing. And, we do live in a world where we have, at least here in America, we have access to so much. And yet I'm sure in the work that you do, you see people who are unhappy despite having on the outside, it looks like they have everything, right?
People with incredible homes and vacation homes and really great cars and really, really miserable lives.
It's crazy.
Then on the other end, people who have very modest lifestyles, but are superbly happy. And you look at their lives and you go, I got to get me some of that.
Mm-hmm. So what is Roger Hall's secret of a happy life? If you could sum it up in a sentence or two.
I think some of the research is, there was a study called the Harvard Study of Men that started in the 1940s. And one of the curators of that study, a guy named George Valent, essentially said there are two things. It's the love of your work and the love of your life. And he found that no matter how much money or power or education or status people had, if they had that primary love relationship and that they enjoyed their productive work, they were happier and lived longer, better lives.
Nice. Well, we're at the part of the show, Roger, I call touchdown. So we'll play with me here. I'm putting you in the red zone. There are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down. And that means it's now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you ran that metaphorical ball into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown.
So I'll give an example from my family, but this is the kind of stuff I try to do metaphorically with my clients, which is my daughter was about 9 years old. She's 22 now, but she was 9 years old, and we're having the fire safety discussion in my house. And we're in her bedroom. And if you know, most children in fires, they found them dead from smoke inhalation, hiding under their bed or hiding in their closet. So we're sitting in her bedroom, and I said, if there was a fire, sweetie, what would you do? And she says, well, I'd run down the stairs and run out the front door. And I said, well, what if it's in front of the front door? And she says, well, then I'd run out, and there was a loft in that house. She said, I'd jump off the loft, and then I'd jump on the couch and run out the back door. And I said, well, what if it was outside your door? She says, I don't know what I'd do. And I said, well, sweetie, why don't you open the window and knock out the screen? And she says, well, I get in trouble for knocking out the screen. And I said, sweetie, I don't really care about the screen. If there's a fire, you can knock out the screen. And she says, but I don't think I could jump that far. And I said, you just told me you're going to jump on the couch. And she said, oh, and the penny dropped. And so I didn't do anything but change her mindset. And I didn't change her reality, but I changed her mindset. And then she was no longer in danger of the kinds of things that other children are in danger of. And so that's what I do, is I try to change people's presuppositions. I try to change their assumptions that they make about the world that they never question, and just ask them. And what I've been grateful to find is that with my adult clients, they have that same epiphany moment. Like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And it's opened up their businesses, it's opened up their careers, it's opened up their relationships, all because they had blinders on. And my job as that guide is to guide them in a new direction.
Exactly. And it's oftentimes something simple. It's oftentimes not this, I always use the metaphor of, the confetti falling from the sky and the champagne corks flying. It's usually not that. It's usually something so simple and almost quiet. And you go, wait a minute, that's it.
Oh, Mary Lou, you have completely summarized my career. I finish a coaching appointment with somebody and I smugly sit in my chair and I think, wow, it was a brilliant intervention. And then they meet with me again and they go, that thing you said last time was really helpful. And I'm absolutely sure it was something that I had planned. It never is something I planned. I mean, it's never any of my intention. It's always some throwaway comment.
Exactly.
I think, okay, I just show up and do my job. I just do the best I can, and they will find the piece that means the most to them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so true. When I was teaching, the same thing happened. I would sometimes spend hours planning this amazing lesson or unit, and it would be okay. But the days when I'd be driving to school thinking, okay, what are we going to do today? And I still didn't know. I'd walk in the classroom and it would just kind of come together. Those were the ones that was so great. I'm like, I have no answer.
Yes.
I cannot describe to you why this, it's just sometimes there's just that magic.
And so, you and I just show up every day.
Yep.
And we do our best. And some days the magic comes.
Right. And some days not. And it's okay either way. It really is. As we round things out here, Roger, I always ask my guests to leave Team PYP with 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your leadership playbook that they could implement right away to make some forward progress in their life, their work. What could you share?
So if we go to my Big 10, I would say the number one most important foundational habit is sleep. I was one of those people for decades of my life. I survived on 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Now I'm that guy that at 9:30 at night, I'm getting ready for bed because I want to get ready to prepare for the next day. I am religious about sleep at this point. So I think that's the number one first place to start. The second is physical exercise. You don't have to do anything, crazy. You just have to move. And you will start to feel better. So some sort of physical activity every day or nearly every day. And the last is nutrition. The things that we put in our system become the precursors of the neurotransmitters that make our brains go. And our brain health and our attitude and our ability to think clearly and our mental health are very much dependent on the fuel we put in our system. Those would be my 3 easiest knockdown tactics to take.
Yeah, those are fabulous. And I agree with them 100%. Sleep is something that has become a topic of conversation. And it's interesting to me to see how there's been this rise of talk about sleep that parallels the rise of our use of electronic devices and how we're exposing ourselves almost nonstop now to what they call the blue light or just the light that's coming from a tablet, a phone, a laptop, a monitor. And then you've got television. There have been lots of studies that show if you come up with a nighttime routine that's pretty consistent and you shut your devices off and you allow yourself to unwind, that you will have a higher quality of sleep than those people who fall asleep with their phone next to them. Because they were on it, right, up to the last second. Yeah, it's interesting how it circles back to what we started with today, how the media has manufactured these levels of importance of things that at one time nobody cares. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking back to the 90s, actually. I was like, wow, back in the 90s, didn't have a smartphone, didn't have a tablet, didn't have a laptop. I had a little Mac 2 because that's what, when I was teaching back then, that's what the school had. So I had one at home. It was one of those, the screen was so small. I do not know how on earth I was doing all the work I was doing on that little Mac. It's hilarious to me when I think back on it, but I filled my time with other things. And so now, and I'm sure you have conversations with people about this all the time, now it has to be an intentional shutting the phone off, putting it in another room, not going to go answer another email. It's dinner time. I'm done for the day. There's a whole new set of skills that we in this time of our history have to develop, or else they're going to just steal everything from us, which is what you're getting at about there's a whole life out there. Take some risks,
There absolutely is. And it is about filtering all of those inputs that are coming to us. And I'm not a Luddite. I love the technology stuff, but I realize there's a time to turn it off and a time to do other things.
Yes. Like take a walk.
Like take a walk.
Yeah. Or read a book or write a book as you have done. Yeah. Well, listen, for people who would like to learn more about you, connect with you online, where do you hang out, Roger?
So online, you can follow me on Instagram or on Twitter at Rogers2Cents. I've got a website, drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. If you're interested in the book, you can find that at stayinghappybeingproductive.com. If you're interested in the Freakout course, you can go to freakoutcourse.com.
Nice. And again, team, these links to connect with Roger to find his amazing work will be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. Make it easy for you. And I encourage you to check out what he's doing, because who among us doesn't want to be happier? I mean, even if you're happy now, you can always pick up something else. And also, you might know somebody who's really struggling with anxiety, and this course could be of benefit to that person. So definitely check it out. And before we say goodbye, Roger, I'd like to ask my football fan guests who your team is. Who are you watching on Saturday?
I am a 3-degree graduate and the son of and the brother of faculty at Ohio State University. So by law, I must be a fan.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we are definitely not in football season as of this recording, but for us fans, we do anticipate the start of that season. And I am hoping, along with millions of others, that we have a full season this fall, that it feels a little bit more like it once did. It'll never be exactly the same, but I'm hoping to get into the stadium and actually watch a game live. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fun.
Yeah, it would be great. Well, Roger, you are a lot of fun. Thank you for having such a positive attitude and for doing the kind of work you do. It's definitely needed. We all need that guide who can say, have you thought about it this way? And it sounds like you excel at that. So it's been wonderful having you here at the Play Your Position podcast.
I'm grateful for the invitation and glad to be a part of your show. Thank you.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.